Brighton and Hove Albion have shocked the Premier League champions. They have beaten Manchester City by 2-1, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at how they did it, including the tactics involved for their 5-minute comeback to help them take all 3 points against the champions. When playing against this Manchester City side, not only do you need to be nearly perfect, but you also need to be inventive in the way that you start to build up and try to cause problems for the opposition. Brighton and Fabian Hutzler tried to look at this, and it was exploiting the back line, in particularly the back offensive line of Manchester City, who were really aggressive in the way that they wanted to try and press and squeeze the pitch. This is, I imagine, to try and help out Man City's midfielders, who didn't look like themselves from a defensive point of view. Offensively they were fine, but there was definitely ability for Brighton to be able to play through them. Utilising Ayari and Hinshelwood, Brighton found themselves trying to really find intricate passes through into Welbeck and Ruta. Ayari occasionally moving forward and helping out with that 5-pronged Brighton attack. So you had 5 Brighton defenders, 5 Brighton attackers, and it became very, very interesting in the way that it was starting to play out. Mitoma and Adingra moving onto the wings to try and spread out that Man City back line, utilising runs from Ruta, Welbeck and Ayari to be able to go past this Manchester City back line. But of course with that there comes some problems, and the problem comes in the fact that if you do end up giving the ball away, for example if Yari or Hinshelwood trying to find those line breaking passes, if you were to happen to be intercepted, then it would cause problems for Brighton on the other end, and that's exactly what happened for Manchester City's goal. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So you have the extremely high Manchester City defensive line. This is to prevent them from being able to play through them but over the top, and also allow them to regain possession if they ever manage to play a pass through. Of course we can see that Ruta is offside and he's just gone a little bit too early. Ayari is about to play the pass that's trying to break the lines into Ruta, but Mateo Kovacic here manages to intercept the pass and then create a turnover. This turnover leads him to drive through the heart of the midfield, and this is where Brighton have problems because they're so expansive in the way that they want to play. They're not defensively set for if they give the ball up, and it requires a lot of precision, a lot of dedication to try and reclaim that possession. It just so happens that Kovacic is quick enough and fast enough to play the ball early into Erling Haaland to be able to get Manchester City on the front foot. It's this pass right here that I think breaks the line for Brighton and really causes a threat. Giving Haaland the ball early gives him a number of different options to have. Not only can he decide to go right, either across his right-hand defender, but also left across his left-hand defender. It's this flexibility that gives Brighton a whole heap of problems, not to mention Erling Haaland's pace and dynamism on the front foot. He ends up going across Van Hecke and it causes a whole heap of problems. He shoots and he manages to get his goal, but it comes from that lazy pass, that intercepted pass from Ayari that really did cause Brighton problems and ended up opening them up from their own attack. But although it bit them back on occasion, Brighton's plan did seem to work. In pushing out their wingers out wide, it forced Manchester City to have a number of different issues that they needed to solve. Although they were really quite compact and resolute, they didn't have the defensive display from their wingers to double up and help out against Brighton's side, which meant that a lot of time you saw Mitoma with a lot of space, Adingra less so but still with quite a bit of space, and it meant that they were able to create double ups and 1v1 opportunities. It was down to this that started to open Manchester City with the runs of Estupiñán, with the runs of Mitoma, taking that space that was afforded to them by Kyle Walker and Savinho. It meant that Brighton started to get a foothold back in the game, and then they were able to start bringing it centrally, utilising Welbeck, utilising the likes of Ruta and the players that they managed to bring on later. It was through this that Brighton managed to get their foothold back in the game. This is what I'm talking about right here. So the ball gets played into Mitoma, who is able to swivel, turn, and then play it through into an on-running Estupiñán. Now just look at how narrow Manchester City are. Look at how close-knit they are with their back four. That's good. But what the problem is the amount of space that Estupiñán is given here. This is acres of space, and you don't see Savinho coming to close him down, which means as the play progresses, what you've actually got is a big question mark for Kyle Walker. Does he A, stick with his back four to make sure that they are tight-knit and difficult to really penetrate through the centre of the pitch? The run from Mitoma is going to be essential, but also you've got these players at the back post who essentially have 1v1s on that side. It's through the space that is exploited here that really causes Manchester City some problems. Brighton have seriously exposed City on this case, and Walker ends up just not doing either. He doesn't stick with his defence, but also he doesn't close down Estupiñán quick enough, and this causes them a whole heap of problems. It allows for Estupiñán to get across into the box, and then it's about whether they can win those headers, and it just so happens that they did manage to win the header, but it ends up going straight to Ederson. But this was a massive warning sign for Manchester City that Brighton was starting to get a big foothold in the game, and then it was about whether they could convert those chances into a goal. With the plan set, some changes were necessary to properly enforce it. Brighton made a few, including the introduction of Baleba, and he was essential not only in going forwards and creating those penetrating passes, but also in recovering possession. Baleba actually won 5 ground duels in his game, and this was more than actually Hinchelwood and Ayari combined in the time that they were playing the match. This was a crucial change, and it was Baleba's physicality and his tone that was able to set the real match pace for Brighton going forwards. O'Reilly came into the side for Ayari as well, and he was going to be the main attacker from this Brighton double pivot. You then had João Pedro come in for Ruta, and you had Gruda come in for Adingra. Once this Brighton team was set, it became really apparent that they wanted to be a little bit more aggressive. O'Reilly making those runs beyond Gvardiol, Welbeck making those runs behind Simpson Pusi, and you also had João Pedro dropping deep to receive the ball, but also being able to go forward whenever he needed to. The space and the width created from Mitoma and Gruda meant that Brighton was starting to get on the front foot. But remember the space that I mentioned earlier, the space that was exposed out on that Brighton left-hand side, that Manchester City right. It was through this that they started to get back into the game, as well as the penetrating passes of Baleba, and then they started to find some momentum. Brighton's first goal came from the left-hand side that we've been talking about, the isolation of that space and that 1v1 duel with Kyle Walker. But if we take a look at this Manchester City backline before the play starts to progress, look how high they are. It's a really good defensive line, and then you've also got the compactness of space between the Manchester City forwards and their backline. Really good defensive play. However, they need the aggression in midfield from these midfielders to be able to make sure that they're able to dominate the ball and win back possession higher up. It just so happens that they don't do that, and the crossfield pass from Van Hecke is absolutely fantastic. It takes all of those players out of the game and isolates that 1v1 duel between Mitoma and Walker, but also at the same time it isolates this space. I can't really explain how important this space is. It's huge, massive, and it gives Mitoma so much license to be able to drive forwards, but also play across into the box. Now, the second thing to notice in this, look at the runs coming from the Brighton players. You've got O'Reilly, you've got the likes of João Pedro, you've got Welbeck willing to make runs towards the box. Man City are in danger zone right now, and it's really critical they manage to try and recover possession. They just so happens that they can't, and the ball gets played in from Mitoma. It's really well done, but then it's about who can win the second ball. It gets intercepted at the front post. Quite well done by the Manchester City defender, but then it's about who is able to get on that second ball. Just so happens Mitoma beats Walker to that. Walker is far too slow to this situation, and Mitoma gets on the ball. He ricochets it back into the box, and then you've got Welbeck, who isn't able to take that touch, but João Pedro, who is faster than any other Manchester City defender does. He managed to get his foot on the ball, and look at this. Look at the melee that's ensuing here, but it's about Pedro's determination, his anticipation, and his awareness of this situation. He gets his foot on the ball and smashes it home, and it just goes to show the difference in not only collective attitude from Manchester City and Brighton, but also the tactical isolation that Fabian Hurtziller's side had down that Brighton left-hand side. And before we end, let's take a look at that Brighton second goal, the winning goal, the goal that really put Manchester City to the sword. So we have this situation. So you've got Manchester City in a good defensive situation right here. You've got the midfield four, you've got the front two, you've got the back four. Everything's fine. However, look at the positioning of the Brighton players. You've got Joao Pedro here. You've got Welbeck here. You've got O'Reilly here. Look at them on the last line of this Manchester City defence. And you've also got a Brighton winger out on this side, and you've got Matoma coming infield to receive the pass. The movement from Brighton here is really, really good, but you've also got Estupiñán threatening this wide space, and that's why you've got Bernardo Silva so very deep. He's come infield to follow Matoma, but then you've got the run from Estupiñán over here. Let's forget about that for a moment and let's focus on this man, Baleba. Remember that pass that I showed you from Hinchelwood, or from Ayari I should say actually, that moved in towards the centre of the pitch. It was taken away by Kovacic and that led to Manchester City's goal. It just so happens in this instance you've got this pass from Baleba that moves into Danny Welbeck. And the moment that that pass is allowed, look at this, the moment this pass is allowed, you've got real problems. Once it goes into Welbeck's feet, it's danger time because you've bypassed not one, not two, but you've bypassed this entire Man City midfield line, as well as Kevin De Bruyne. 5 players with 1 pass. That can't happen. 5. It's incredible. But once it goes into Welbeck, then you've got problems because you've got Joao Pedro on the movement here. You've got Joao Pedro on the run. He's going to receive the pass from Welbeck. A really neat first-time touch from Danny Welbeck. And then you've got issues because you've got O'Reilly making that run. You've got Welbeck making that run. And these runs are crucial because they take away the Manchester City defenders. The idea is to create space for Joao Pedro or be able to play in a pass. It just so happens that this run is the run that Joao Pedro is looking for, and it's this pass that gets played through. Seriously, seriously good stuff. But again, before we look at that pass, look at this. Look at this. Look how encompassed Manchester City are to the centre of the pitch. It's almost like they don't know how to defend the wide areas. They're too slow. They're not being aware or acute enough. And the fact that you've got so many Manchester City players here is just testament to how good Joao Pedro's close control is to be able to give the ball over to O'Reilly. When he passes the ball over, it's then about whether O'Reilly can make that first touch and then get the ball on target. It just so happens that he is, and he can do, and it's a fantastic goal. But Manchester City were carved open here through the centre, through the heart of their defence. It's absolutely brilliant, and Brighton thoroughly deserve their victory, their goal. They deserve everything, and I will not be hearing the fact that Manchester City have injuries because they should be doing far better than what they are right now. Manchester City were carved open by Brighton, and they thoroughly deserve to be. Brighton were fantastic. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you make of this match? What did you make of Brighton? And of course, what do you make of Manchester City losing 4 games on the bounce? I don't want that to be the story. I want the story to be around Brighton because they were, as I said, sensational. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, guys. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.